Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to be doing my second video, which is focused on plant-based nutrition. And it's extra special because at the time of filming this, it's actually my birthday weekend. So yesterday I turned 36, and what
better way to celebrate a lockdown birthday than working on your YouTube video?
So let's talk about Veganuary. If you're doing Veganuary right now, or if you're thinking of transitioning to a plant-based lifestyle, then these are my top tips to help you understand the specific vitamins and minerals that you should really be paying particular attention to when you are transitioning to a vegan or plant-based diet. Just to give you a bit of background on the vegan and plant-based landscape in the UK, according to Finder.com, their latest survey results, which came out a few days ago on the 4th of January, their results indicate that currently there are 7.2 million British adults who follow a meat-free diet. And this can be as high as 13 million by the end of 2021 if everyone who sets out to go meat-free actually stick with it. So more and more people are adopting a plant-based lifestyle, whether it's for health reasons, to support the environment, or for ethical reasons. It's really important that we educate ourselves on the nutritional qualities of all the different types of plant foods, because it's not just focusing on what not to eat in terms of culling out all animal products. We should be focusing on what we should be eating in terms of plant foods to ensure that we maintain a balanced diet. Because I think it's worth mentioning that vegan doesn't automatically mean healthy or balanced. And this is one of the key differences when we compare a vegan diet to a whole foods plant-based diet. Diets that are predominantly whole foods, whether it includes meat or doesn't include meat, they tend to avoid highly processed foods that are high in fat, salt, and sugar. So before I go into the plant-based nutrition, let's talk about what does plant-based really mean. And there are actually a few different definitions of plant-based which I think will be useful for us to understand before we go into it. The first definition is the vegan diet. Vegan refers to a 100% plant-based diet where only plant foods are consumed. And so this diet consists mainly of fruit and vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains and whole wheat, and beans and legumes. They don't eat any animal products, and they also avoid dairy, eggs, and honey as well. Then we have the vegetarian diet, which is predominantly filled with plant foods, but also includes some dairy and eggs. So vegetarians don't eat any meat, fish, or seafood, but they do consume foods derived from animal products. Then we have the pescatarian diet. Now you're probably wondering, how can a pescatarian be plant-based? Pescatarians can be plant-based because they eat a small to a moderate amount of fish and seafood, but their overall diet is centered around whole foods and plant foods. Then finally, we have the flexitarian diet. Yes, meat eaters can also be plant-based. Omnivores who follow a plant-based diet eat small amounts of meat, animal products, and seafood, so their overall diet is still very much centered around plant foods. A good example of this is the Mediterranean diet. The key criteria for a plant-based diet is that the overall foods consumed are not only plant foods, but whole foods. So if you do come across someone who says they are plant-based, it's always good to understand their personal preferences. And it's not always the case that a plant-based diet means they are vegan. Personally, if I was to label myself, I would probably call myself a plant-based pescatarian, because on the whole, I eat some dairy and eggs occasionally throughout the week, and a few times a month, maybe once a week, I would have some fish or seafood. So my diet consists predominantly of whole foods and plant foods. And on a very, very rare occasion, I may have some meat. This constitutes maybe a handful of times a year. So On the whole, not that I like labels, but if I did, I would call myself a plant-based pescatarian. Okay, so on to the nutrient requirements. When you're transitioning to a no or a very low animal foods diet, it's really important that you replace certain nutrients with appropriate alternatives so that you avoid malnutrition. So this isn't an exhaustive list of all of the nutrients that you need, but these are the ones that you should pay particular attention to. The first nutrient is vitamin B12. B12 is essential in the production of red blood cells, in the metabolism of food, and in normal growth and development. But B12 is derived only from animal sources, so the best alternative for vegans is with fortified and enriched foods. So this includes foods like plant milks, cereals, vegan spreads, nutritional yeast extract like Marmite, and also meat substitutes are really commonly fortified with B12. The recommended daily amount for adult women and men is 1.5 micrograms per day. So what you want to do is check the labels of the fortified foods and see what levels of B12 they have in them. Usually if you eat fortified foods 2 to 3 times a day, you should be able to meet your daily requirements. The other alternative is you may want to consider taking a B12 supplement. If you're doing Veganuary and you're thinking, well, it's just a month, maybe it's not that important. Well, B12 is a water-soluble vitamin, which means we don't store it in the body. So just like vitamin C, it's a micronutrient that we need to get from our diet on a daily basis. Iron is a micromineral that we need to produce hemoglobin, which is essential in the transportation of oxygen around the body. There are 2 types of iron. There's heme iron, which comes from animal sources like meat, fish and seafood. And then we have non-heme iron, which comes from plant sources. And good plant sources of iron include chickpeas, beans, lentils, tofu, nuts and seeds like cashews, hemp seeds, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, and also dark green leafy vegetables like kale, whole grains like quinoa, and you also have fortified foods as well. The recommended daily amount for menstruating women is 14.8 milligrams per day, and for men this goes down to 8.7 milligrams per day. But non-heme iron isn't as readily absorbed by the body, so when you are eating iron-rich foods, you want to include some vitamin C, which aids and promotes iron absorption. And at the same time, I'd recommend that you avoid drinking tea or coffee 30 to 60 minutes either side of your meals, because tea and coffee inhibit iron absorption. Calcium is a macromineral that keeps our bones healthy. A good source of calcium from animal products is milk and dairy, but there are great plant sources of calcium such as tofu, green leafy vegetables like broccoli, kale and spinach, nuts and seeds like almonds and sesame seeds, as well as tahini, dried fruit, pulses, bread, and also fortified foods. The daily recommended amount for calcium for adult women and men is 700 milligrams per day. A balanced and a varied diet is the best way to get enough calcium in your overall diet, but also you want to make sure that you have a good amount of vitamin D stored in your body, because vitamin D aids and promotes calcium absorption. Omega-3, technically not a vitamin or a mineral, it's a type of polyunsaturated fat, and it's an essential fatty acid because our bodies can't synthesize it. We have to get it from our food. It's really important in the normal functioning of our cardiovascular, reproductive, immune and nervous systems, so it's really important. It's usually found in animal sources like oily fish, but there's some amazing plant sources as well, such as flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, rapeseed oil, soy and soya products like tofu, and also some seaweed or algae. There's also more and more fortified products on the market like breads, juices, milks, margarines and yogurts as well. There isn't an official daily recommended intake, but health organizations do usually recommend somewhere between 250 and 500 milligrams per day to be sufficient. Iodine is a micromineral that we need to synthesize thyroid hormones. And thyroid hormones are super important because they impact nearly every single cell in the body. They regulate our metabolic rate, they impact protein synthesis, they support heart, muscle, and digestive function, brain development, bone maintenance, so they're super important. The main sources of iodine is fish, dairy, and eggs. And although there are some levels of iodine in plant foods like fruit and vegetables, they tend to be really, really low. So vegans do tend to be at risk of deficiency. So the best option for vegans is foods like seaweed, but it's quite rare and you don't really eat it very often, iodized salt, or you can consider supplementing. My recommendation is to go with iodized salt because you can buy it in most UK supermarkets and you can use it in your everyday cooking. The next nutrient is selenium. Selenium is a component of proteins that play a key role in thyroid function, in metabolism, and selenium is also an antioxidant. Animal sources of selenium are eggs, meat, and fish, but there's some amazing plant sources as well, including Brazil nuts, cashew nuts, sunflower seeds, couscous, and whole wheat pasta as well. The recommended daily amount for adult women is 60 micrograms per day, and this goes up to 75 micrograms for men. My tip is that 1 to 2 Brazil nuts per day will cover all your needs for both women and men. Then we have zinc. Zinc is also an antioxidant and it supports the healthy growth and development of cells all around the body. It's usually coming from foods like oysters and shellfish, some meats and dairy and eggs, but there's some great plant sources as well like tofu, beans, nuts and seeds, and also some vegetables like pumpkin, spinach and broccoli. The daily recommended amount for adult women is 7 milligrams per day, and for men this is 9.5 milligrams per day. One thing about zinc and in terms of plant foods is that plant foods also contain something called phytate or phytic acid, which actually inhibits zinc absorption. So a tip here is you can try soaking your beans overnight, and you can have fermented whole grains like sourdough, which have been found to reduce the levels of phytic acid. The last nutrient is vitamin D. Vitamin D plays an important role on bone health because it aids and promotes calcium absorption, but also supports lots of other functions in the body, like the regulation of our immune responses and brain function. The best source of vitamin D is the sunshine. So during winter months, it's important that we maintain good levels of vitamin D through our dietary sources. Vitamin D is found in predominantly animal sources, so vegans can opt for fortified foods like cereals, like plant milks, and also vegan spreads. Alternatively, you could consider taking a vitamin D3 supplement up to 10 micrograms per day. So those are the 8 nutrients that if you're on a vegan or plant-based diet, you should be paying particular attention to. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any favorite fortified foods or plant-based alternatives, because I love hearing about them. In my next video, I'll be talking specifically about plant-based proteins. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked this content, please give me a thumbs up, and if you could subscribe, that would be the best birthday present ever. I hope to see you in the next one. See ya!